Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome tonight. I want to echo what you've already heard. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Believe me, I know how busy your lives are, and you could be doing 1,000 other things tonight, so I very much appreciate the fact that you've come tonight and the enthusiasm for caring about the Atlanta area. Helps me in my job to know that there's people out there who really care about what's happening in this region. I want to quickly introduce two other ARC staff that are here. Judy Dovers is our Public Involvement Coordinator. And John Orr, John, who is our long-range plan manager. So, again, thank you so much. A few questions to start. How many of you have visited ARC's website? Okay. How many have participated in our online public meeting? Okay. Thank you, Ron. Something we'll tell you about tonight, and we have some cards in the back. How many of you have participated in either the Civic League's Neighborhood Summit last fall or the Neighborhood Forums on 50 Forward? A few of you? Okay, so some of you are familiar with that effort. That just helps me get an understanding of maybe your level of knowledge of what we've been doing through Plan 2040 and other regional efforts. Well, why are we here? We're here to talk about Plan 2040, which is the region's plan for sustainability. And we want your opinion on where the plan needs to head for transportation, land development, quality of life. And why is your input important? What are we going to do with it? Well, this plan is ultimately going to be for us and our communities. And it will form the basis for decisions that are being made on how federal funds are going to be spent, even how local and state funds may be spent in the region. So it is a very important plan. We update the plan every 4 years. And this is the first time we've really focused on sustainability. There's 3 prongs to sustainability that we're looking at. It's in your handout. Environmental, social, and economic sustainability. And all 3 have to be balanced. You can't just focus on environmental to the detriment of social and quality of life issues and economic issues. You can't just focus on economic and forget about environmental. We have to look at the balance of all 3. Let me give you an example about that. During the height of the recession, probably about a year and a half ago, our congestion levels, believe it or not, were at an all-time low. We had less congestion a year and a half ago than we had 10 years prior. Well, that's a good thing, right? We achieved our goal of reduced congestion. Or was it a good thing because we also had 10.5% unemployment? So how can we find that balance of employment and reducing congestion? So you can see that balance of economic, environmental, social. Another example is air quality. You know, we've had a reputation of having bad air and severe congestion in this region, and it's caused some companies not to locate here. So we're losing high-paying jobs, perhaps, from these companies that aren't locating here. So again, we have to look at that balance of our quality of life, the environmental, improving that so that we can improve our economy. So again, they're so interrelated. We've come to the realization, I think at the ARC, that the plan simply can't just be a transportation plan anymore. It simply can't be a land use plan. It has to be a combination. A few little factoids that I thought you might like to know when you leave, before you leave today. Did you know that the average Atlantan drives 28 miles a day? That's for every man, woman, and child. Did you know that we had 25,000 fewer crashes in 2009 than we did in 2008? We reduced the number of bad air days from 29 in 2008 to 14 in 2009. And that the population of Metro Atlanta has grown on average 105,000 people per year between 2000 and 2009. So at that rate, and through our long-range forecasting, we estimate by 2040 that the region will have 8 million people. So approximately 4.5 to 5 million people now, depending on how you define the region, which we have a map up here of the region. You're looking at about 3 million more people in this region. Well, how are they going to get around? Where are they going to live? Where are they going to work? The decisions that we make in this plan of how money is going to be spent will impact those individual decisions 20 and 30 years from now. That's kind of, I think that's kind of neat to think about, you know, and it's true. When you think about a project, a transportation project, maybe taking 10, 15 years to be built, and then the impact that project has over time, you can see how that is really true. We spent most of 2009 talking to stakeholders, citizens. We've had the online public forum. We've had town meetings, a number of different ways of getting opinions. We had the neighborhood forums last year, and we've developed a regional assessment. And so this year, we're taking that effort. We've put together a vision, goals, and objectives, and we want to get some comment from you tonight on that. And then we're taking that now and wanting to get comment from you on where we're going to head and the direction we're going to head with those. So some of the key assessment findings, Atlanta has many assets. We've put many of them up on the charts already. You know, we're headquarters to many Fortune 500 companies, Coca-Cola, UPS, Delta, Home Depot. We have the world's busiest airport. We have the 9th largest transit system in the country, in MARTA. The intersections, we have, you know, major distribution of goods and services, and many colleges and universities. In fact, we have one of the largest concentrations of colleges and universities of any major metro area. Sometimes we forget about that, but I think Boston may be ahead of us, but not too many other major cities are. And of course, many cultural and entertainment activities. So if you refer to your handout here, this handout, what are some of the current needs in Metro Atlanta? These are some of the findings and some of the challenges that we have put together from what we've heard from citizens and stakeholders, the ARC board, other elected officials. The region's well positioned for an economic recovery, but only if we're willing to adjust on how we live and do business. The long-term economic success of the region is directly tied to the availability of water. We can't forget we've got a huge issue in front of us with that, and a lot of it is tied up in the courts now, depending on the appeals made to the original decision concerning the use of Lake Lanier. But even regardless of that lawsuit, water is an issue in this area. We are one of the largest metro areas in the country with the smallest water supply source, even with Lake Lanier. The region needs significant transportation investments and increased housing availability in major employment centers. We forecast that even though there could be other major centers by 2040, the major centers we have today, the airport, downtown, Buckhead, Midtown, Cumberland, Perimeter, are still going to be those major employment centers in 2040. The region does not have the financial capacity to expand further if it expects to meet the needs of its people and communities. Now that's a powerful statement. And looking at what it takes to provide infrastructure, schools, water, police, fire, in communities that are very low density, it's quite expensive. And are we going to be able to afford those types of communities in the future? Let's see. I think we've gone through many of these. Right now, 75% of us have no other option to travel than by car. And beyond the need for increased transportation funding, the existing assets must be better managed. This is an important point as well. We have to preserve our existing assets. These are investments that our forefathers made for us to enjoy. We have to continue preserving those, and unfortunately, the nature of the beast, they get more expensive year by year to preserve. Just like if you live in a house, the house I live in is now going on 20 years and everything's starting to break down. It's the same thing with our infrastructure, and MARTA and CCT. All of our infrastructure gets to an age where it can't always be shiny and new. And we have to make the commitment to continue to preserve what we've made investments in. We have a lot of this information on our website. I definitely encourage you to go to atlantaregional.com/plan2040 and look at this information in detail. Some other things that we've heard in terms of trends, that we should focus on doing better with what we have. We need to connect housing, jobs, and transportation assets. We need to emphasize interconnectivity. We need to provide more than one choice of travel. We need to provide transit options of many forms. The public seems to be divided on focusing investments in already developed areas of the region. We also heard that density really only works in certain areas, and that safety is a primary concern. Those are some highlights of some things we've heard, and I think those are also on your handout. So with that, the assessment that we've done, what we've heard from the public, we came up with a vision statement, goals, and objectives that we actually are going to be taking to our board next month for action and having them say, yes, this is what we want Plan 2040 to be all about. And that is also on your handout. How can we address these needs? Our vision: to provide aggressive leadership for sustainable growth, balanced environmental responsibility, economic growth, and social needs. And to that end, we've developed 3 goal statements of what we want Metro Atlanta to be: leading as the global gateway to the South, encouraging healthy communities, and expanding access to community resources, trying to hit those 3 areas of social, economic, and environmental. 5 objectives on how we can achieve that vision by increasing mobility options, fostering a healthy, educated, safe and secure population, promoting residential choices in locations that have access to jobs and services, improving energy and resource efficiency, and identifying innovative approaches to economic recovery. Well, I guess we'd walk on water if we could do all of these at the snap of a finger, but we do think that these are important objectives, and there are actions through transportation and land use initiatives that our elected officials can take that can get us a long way towards meeting these objectives. Right, so how realistic is the 8 million? Well, very good question. Our demographers, we have a whole department that does this forecasting. You are right. The past, we call it the lost decade. Actually, even though we grew 100,000 on average between 2000 and 2009, we actually lost jobs. We have less jobs now than we did 10 years ago. But we forecast over the long term, 30 years, that we're going to be able to get out of this time we're in right now in terms of recession and continue to build on what we have. Now, remember, half of that is natural increase, too. So it's not all just people moving here. It's people having families and children staying here and having children. The question was about urbanized communities, and I'm trying to find where Oh, okay, I see it. We must focus our planning on both existing urbanized communities and those reserved for conservation. You're right. I mean, urbanized is a term that can mean quite a number of things, but here we basically mean the already developed areas of the region. Okay, so that does include Woodstock and Decatur, but what do we do to, how do we manage growth beyond what's already developed? It means all of that, and that's why we internally we had a lot of discussion about that as well, and settled on that terminology because it can have a variety of meanings, and it can mean all of that. I have a question. Our young folks that are here, how old will you be in the year 2040? Well, one of the things, the question, how can ARC help with education? One of the things I brought up in this group was the fact that we need to think about what ARC can do with regards to education. Obviously, there is an education structure, an institution in the state that can only be changed, I guess, through an act of the General Assembly. But what, through transportation or land use, can enable better education? For example, providing transit to universities. Clayton State now does not have transit. So how can we provide options for those students, help those students who want to get an education? That's just a small example, but we need to think about what, through this plan, we can do to help with the education system. We have listed our regional assessment key findings, which I went over earlier with you, and below that on the table is what we're calling our potential direction and focus areas for Plan 2040, essentially our policies. And how we would use these statements is that when we develop strategies and projects, specifically for transportation, we would go through and say, does this project promote sustainable energy efficient development? And we would go through these and try to assess potential strategies and how, what kind of direction they provide. So we need to know from you what these statements mean for the Atlanta region, and what are the actions and strategies that we could put in Plan 2040 that could meet some of these directions. So just quickly, promoting sustainable and energy efficient development, assuring the preservation and maintenance and operations of our existing system, focusing resources and public investments in existing communities. That gets back to that urbanized communities question. Through regional infrastructure planning, this is one that I want to get some input from you, because it has some difference of opinion here. Through regional infrastructure planning, limit growth in undeveloped areas of the region, encourage a variety of choices related to housing and transportation for all income groups and ages. At strategic regional locations, plan and retain industrial and freight land uses. Logistics is our third largest employer in this region. It is a key to our economic viability, and it is an important piece of of why even Atlanta exists, because of where we're located. So how can we maintain that? And then increase or density and a mix of uses, office use, residential use, commercial use, around planned transit stations. Conserve, protect environmentally sensitive areas. This could be watershed protection areas. And promote alternatives and efficiencies of the existing system before adding capacity.